Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. My name is Marty Wold, and I'm the Assistant Vice President for Annual Giving and Alumni Engagement and the Executive Director of the OU Alumni Association. We're so grateful to have you joining us for Sooners Around the World, which is one half of our two-part virtual alumni engagement series. More on that in just a moment. Sooners Around the World represents a network of more than 260,000 alumni and friends. Launched in September of 2021, this virtual travel, networking, and discovery series provides limitless possibilities for worldwide engagement, showcasing high-achieving and uniquely talented alumni impacting their communities, their industries, and life in their corner of the world. Together, through Sooners Around the World, we've virtually traveled to Iceland, England, Indonesia, Nepal, Uganda, and today Guyana, to meet up with outstanding alumni who represent the best of the University of Oklahoma. The other half of our virtual engagement program is the Titan series, where we bring you the biggest names in OU athletics, academics, business, and the arts. Stay tuned for more details about the next installment of the Titan series, which is scheduled for November of this year, where we will connect with Annette White-Klasowski, who was recently named one of the top 50 women leaders of Oklahoma City for 2025. You won't want to miss that. Now on to today's program. I'm excited to introduce Dr. Ken Peterson, who will be facilitating today's conversation. Ken is a professor of marketing and supply chain management in the Price College of Business, a senior associate dean for faculty and research innovation, and the Helen Robson Walton Chair in Marketing and Strategy. Prior to joining the University of Oklahoma, he had stops at the University of Tennessee, Arizona State University, the University of Oregon, and Colorado State. And most recently, he served as the Dean of the College of Business and Economics at Boise State University. Ken, I'll turn it over to you to introduce today's speaker.
Okay, Marty, thanks so much for the warm welcome and introduction. I also want to offer a warm Sooner welcome to Shannon Hutchings, a former Sooner and proud graduate of the Michael F. Price College of Business class of 2013. But before I introduce Shannon formally, I'd like to share a bit about Price College, which is in fact the fastest growing college at OU and one of the fastest growing colleges in the country. In 4 more years, my college, Price College, will be a century old. And so if you happen to be a graduate, you can expect some wonderful celebrations at that point. If you think back to 2013, we had a student body of 3,593 students. And last fall, we topped 6,311 students, representing an annual growth rate of around 7%. In fact, last year alone, we grew by 10%. Our enrollment for the fall of 25 is expected to be around, this coming fall is expected to be around 7,000 students. And our incoming class size this fall is around 1,750. So just enormous growth. And these are great kinds of problems to have. Our faculty has grown to 129 faculty members. It's an outstanding college with a fantastic student body and a very, very student-centered faculty. And it's a wonderful place to work. So let me talk just for a second about the program Shannon graduated from back in 2013. It's our supply chain management program, which is now ranked number 21 in the country by Gartner. It has around 200 majors, and it's also experiencing very, very healthy growth and fantastic job opportunities and placement for our students graduating from that program. So that's a little bit about my college and about our supply chain management program. Let's turn our attention to Shannon, who is a dedicated and results-driven professional who spent the last 12 years with ExxonMobil working in the supply chain procurement organization. So Shannon and I share that procurement background as well. She's contributed to various upstream drilling campaigns, as well as IT software purchases for business partners across the country, bringing a strategic mindset and a collaborative spirit to every project. On a personal note, Shannon is married to EM, which is like ExxonMobil, dual career program, but she's married to Spencer Hutchings, and they have 2 beautiful girls, Harper, who's 3.5 years old, and Vivienne, who is 2 years old. After spending 11 years in Houston, her family moved to an expatriate assignment in Guyana, now living in Georgetown as a project advisor. She is embracing the culture and excited about the new opportunities that this new culture and affiliation with ExxonMobil bring to her daily life. We're so pleased to have Shannon with us. And Shannon, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken. Hi there, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I really appreciate this opportunity. So I'll just start by saying, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of the Sooners Around the World series. It's an honor to get to come and talk to you all and share a bit of my journey with fellow OU alumni, family, and colleagues around the world. So I truly appreciate your time and support, and thank you for tuning in. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and begin kind of my presentation that I have for you. Okay. Can I just receive confirmation that you can see it?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll just do a quick introduction about myself. Ken covered most of it, so thank you, Ken, for that warm introduction. Real quick, I'm from a small town, North Texas, called Salina, a proud graduate of OU Price College of Business. So I majored in supply chain and finance and some entrepreneurship. You'll see my OU graduation photo in that top far left. I have interned at ExxonMobil before, which I'll talk to, as well as joining full time and giving you that whole journey. Married to my husband, Spencer, who, as Ken mentioned, is also ExxonMobil career, and we met here at work. We have two beautiful children, Harper, who is 3.5, and then Vivian, who is 2, or she will be 2 next month. So a lot of fun. We like to joke we're in the thick of the toddler chaos. So it's a fun home life as well. I've basically been in Houston my whole career. You'll see a lot of travel photos, getting to meet teams from around the world, which were project basis and getting that travel experience. But been located in Houston up until about 7 months ago when my family moved to Georgetown, Guyana. I've had many different roles, 6 different roles in the course of my career. I still call myself like early on mid-career. So a lot more to learn and grow within the corporation. So excited about that as well. Just to highlight some photos on the screen. So the bottom right hand is the Guyana flag. And that was just a fun photo we took as a family to announce our move here. The one right above it is a funny photo to me because we looked crazy showing up to the airport with, I think we had 14 checked bags, a dozen, what felt like a dozen carry-ons and backpacks to go along with it. So it was a big move, but we were really ready to go. And that was just moments before we left on our adventure here. One thing that is pretty neat about Guyana is it's really close to a lot of the Caribbean islands. And so as a family, we've had the opportunity to travel to some of those islands. That top middle photo is us in Barbados. And then the bottom left-hand photo is us getting some special time visiting St. Lucia. So really exciting, lots to see around here. And I'll get into more about all those opportunities here shortly. So if there's one theme that has really defined my journey, it's people. And you'll hear me reflect on kind of the power of people throughout my whole presentation. To start off, I'd like to share a bit about the history of how I got here, starting with the personal side of things at OU. From the moment I visited the University of Oklahoma, I was struck by the warmth and energy of the community there. It immediately felt like home on campus. And so that energy was really special to me to be able to jump into from a small town into a big university. I still remember walking in my freshman year to Dale Hall and taking one of those general freshman courses, and there were so many students in that room. I believe there were more students in that room than my whole high school combined. So it was a bit overwhelming, but OU quickly became home. I found myself through a variety of college activities, from OU athletics or Sooner athletics to Gamma Phi Beta sorority, and other entrepreneurship programs throughout the Price College of Business. So for those that have maybe been a part of IBC, that was really where I got to thrive and flex that entrepreneurship muscle. While getting my degree, I worked all 4 years at the Honors College. And that was a pretty cool full circle moment for me because I got to give tours and explain kind of all the great things and qualities about OU and really reflecting on the people that did that for me when I first chose OU as the university I wanted to attend. So being able to provide that for incoming, potential Sooners was really exciting. That people connection with juniors or seniors or maybe even younger in high school really deepened my connection to OU and again the people. It wasn't just a place I studied, but it became really a part of who I am. My time at OU, like many of you, will lay the foundation for really everything that followed. From student leadership to professional development, every experience I had really prepared me for the opportunities that came next. Before I share more about Guyana, I want to provide a quick summary of how I got here professionally. I mentioned the personal side and what got me to OU, and now I just want to talk about ExxonMobil. So during my recruitment at OU, I was drawn to ExxonMobil for really 2 reasons. One was the scale of the company and getting the opportunity to potentially work with people around the globe. And 2, the chance to earn enough money to travel and see that world personally. It was as simple as that. I wanted to have the means to travel and explore while also working with great teams across the globe. So I was thrilled when they offered me a job for an internship and getting to kind of take a peek into what that would be like as a full-time employment post-graduation. At the time, ExxonMobil was a Fortune 1 company. We were surpassing Walmart. As you can imagine, that's a huge scale of a company. It really brought my interest to the forefront. It was through my internship and learning that there's so much more to ExxonMobil than just being kind of a quote unquote oil and gas company. And that's where I became fascinated by the scale of the company's operations. And I was really excited to start my career there full time. After graduation, my journey with ExxonMobil began. I've had the privilege of working with diverse teams across the globe, and through various roles, they've all brought new challenges, new surprises, and truly some personal growth as well. Through these roles, I've gotten to really travel and meet teams from all over the world. Here you'll see our teams from N'Djamena, Chad, and Lagos, Nigeria, and Africa. Here is where in my global training role, I got to share and teach and train on procurement processes. Anything from a requisition and ordering all the way through invoicing and payment. And my goal really when visiting a lot of these countries was to help the citizens of those countries and my former colleagues be able to do their job more effective and efficiently. Next was my visit to Bangkok, Thailand, and Bangalore, India. And this is where I continued those trainings. Each assignment has taught me something new about the industry, leadership, and as I mentioned, myself. I've been able to support many different parts of the corporation. For example, one of the 6 roles I've had was supporting offshore drilling activities off the coast of Equatorial Guinea in Africa. I've got to support some plug and abandonment operations in the Gulf of Mexico. I mentioned my recruiting role or my training role. I've gotten to be a U.S. recruiter and bring in the top talent into ExxonMobil from universities across the United States. And to now currently being an IT procurement project advisor and working some of the largest technology deals with vendors like Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, and Amazon. So ExxonMobil is so much more than extracting oil out of the ground, using it to transform into products, help fuel the global economy. Those are all so important and huge to what we do. But the global impact ExxonMobil has in sustainability and innovation is transformative. Currently, we are committed to reducing emissions and developing lower carbon technologies while meeting the energy demands globally. So it's truly incredible, at least for myself, to be a very small part of all that ExxonMobil is doing. One thing I want to mention that may have been underappreciated when I was at OU was really the importance and the power of a network. So we come from a great school at OU, and the Price College of Business gives so many opportunities to meet, executives from around the world and really embrace networking. And so being from a great school helps enable us to have that network. And I was fortunate enough in the bottom photo towards the back, one of my colleagues named Roger Romy, he was part of my recruiting at OU. He interviewed me and really, as a former OU alum, was a part of my recruitment process back in 2011, 2012. And then many years later, getting to travel across the globe with him to deliver trainings. So I say all this to say, I just want to share and emphasize the importance of having a mentor-mentee relationship, both while at university and beyond, more so in your career. As I mentioned in the beginning, I wanted the opportunity to work with global teams professionally. And then that second part was driving my passion and being able to have the means to travel personally. So here I'll share a couple of slides of some personal travels. Here I've been to Argentina, on the far right getting to explore Chile and be outside of the city of Santiago in the Andes Mountains. And then more in the bottom middle, getting to check off a bucket list for myself, which was visiting Machu Picchu and doing the Inca Trail hike. That was a big bucket list item for me, and it was a dream. One thing I also try and do when traveling is have some sort of impact locally. So you'll see photos there when I got to visit some orphanages in the rural parts of Lima, Peru, and bring a couple of stuffies and goodies from the US for those that remember Beanie Babies, getting to take those with me and share to the kids and just be able to provide a hot meal, a little stuffed animal, and just give them a lot of love. Next were some personal travels throughout Asia. My husband and I got to explore Bali, Indonesia, and Tokyo, Japan. One thing that I personally have never had much of a desire to do was scuba diving. And it wasn't until being in these countries and parts of the world that I got to have an opportunity to do this and try it out. And of course, fell in love with it. So I always found myself being one, I'll stay on top of the water in a boat. I had no desire to really be below, but scuba diving allows you to be with the sea life. And it was something that really fueled a passion of mine. And so it's something my husband and I really enjoyed to do together. So again, I encourage you, things that you might not think you would be interested in, really embrace it and go for it. Try something new, especially if you're in a different part of the world. Next is continuing some of my travels throughout Europe. You'll see a couple of famous landmarks there with Big Ben in London and the Eiffel Tower in Paris, getting to spend summers and winters in Canada, hiking around the US, and then also off the coast of Italy and Cinque Terre. I share all of this because when I look at, again, going back to what I was passionate about, ExxonMobil has financially enabled me to explore the world. And we pay a competitive salary. We value workplace flexibility. And as I think back to when I was in college and what my values were then and now, they haven't changed. And work-life balance in that meaning for me is getting to work exciting projects, great, cool initiatives, challenging initiatives, but also getting to flex that into the personal side of things with adventure. So I've shared with you a lot of my personal and professional travels and all of my various roles that I've had and around the globe. And most recently, my journey and adventure has brought me to Guyana. From the very beginning, I've reiterated my love for people and traveling. And so my husband and I shares that same, my husband also shares that passion. And so from the very beginning, we were vocal to our company ExxonMobil to if there was ever an expatriate assignment, we were really interested. So when the chance to live and work in Guyana came up on the table, we were a resounding yes. We couldn't wait. A few things to share about my new home country. As you can see, it's part of South America, so it borders Suriname, Venezuela, Brazil. It is the only English-speaking country in South America. It's defined by a dense rainforest, and really deeply connected to the Caribbean culture. So one thing that's been really fun here is we've embraced the love of soca music, and my kids love it. It just sparks joy and dancing, and that's a big part of the culture here. So it's been really fun to have it play in the house with two young ones to dance with. Guyana is known as the land of many waters. So as I travel from home to work, there's tons of canals and rivers that run all throughout the city. The entire country of Guyana population is 800,000. So to put it into perspective, for those that are on Norman campus at OU, you've probably been to Oklahoma City, right nearby. And Oklahoma City's population is 760,000. So you think just Oklahoma City alone's population is how much it is in the entire country of Guyana. There are many different religions here. More prominent ones are Muslim, Christian, Hindu, and it's really awesome how we embrace all of the holidays here and really respect the religions and embrace those holidays by celebrating together. Now, a significant challenge within Guyana is infrastructure. We experience frequent power outages. Just as recent as yesterday, we had no power for about 11 hours. The lack of deep water ports, underdeveloped roads and telecommunication systems, and all of this hinders the economic development and the quality, really, of life for Guyanese. Another concern is the access to clean water. So as I did in Peru, I like to visit the orphanages here. And throughout my short time here and being to various ones, it's disheartening to see not even just the lack of clean water for children to bathe with, but more importantly, to drink. And so it's a personal mission of mine to really help with this for both the children and the staff at the orphanages here. Addressing these deficits is crucial for Guyana to realize the economic potential and improve standard of living conditions. I highly recommend you read up on Guyana. It is the fastest economy in the world. And in the last few years, I would say, even though we started oil in 2015, even just the last 5 years, the sheer growth that this country has had is unprecedented. And it's really exciting to be a part of it. The impact that Guyana has had here that ExxonMobil has had here in the developing country of Guyana has been transformative. I mentioned after discovering the oil in 2015, our operations have led to substantial growth, economic growth, creating an immense amount of job opportunities, really prioritizing local businesses, helping the supply chain, and again, just the overall workforce development. All of this is helping contribute to a more stable and prosperous economy. I currently work as an IT project advisor, and so in corporate procurement. And so I cover areas such as IT, facilities, and labor. And what that means is I work internally with stakeholders. If there's a need for a goods or service, more so in the IT or software space, I work internally with the business line here at ExxonMobil, as well as the vendors, to handle those negotiations and make sure we're receiving that good or service at a competitive price. Here are a few pictures of my team members that I get to work with in Guyana. There are varying levels of experience on the team, which really helps bring different perspectives as we all kind of continue to meet the wins of ExxonMobil and the affiliate here. You'll see in the center, that was our team getting all dressed up at the annual gala, getting to eat together, great food, and dance to that soca music I mentioned, and just really celebrate. The bottom middle photo is us promoting health and wellness, doing a 5K around the national park here in Guyana. And so a lot of opportunities to kind of corral and come together and celebrate both inside and outside of the office. So I want to end with this slide. And I've only been living in Guyana for about 7 months now as an expat, but it's truly been the start of another great chapter filled with opportunity, growth, and connection. I'm excited to share some of these experiences with you in hopes that maybe this will spark something inside of you. Some cool kind of cultural experiences we've had is that front center picture of me covered in powder was us celebrating Pagua or Holi. The bottom left-hand photos are of my older daughter's international school getting to celebrate and learn and embrace Guyana Independence Day. And one thing, if you Google Guyana or things to do in Guyana, things to see, the number one thing will be Kiter Falls, and that's that top right-hand or left-hand photo. A beautiful waterfall in that dense rainforest that I shared earlier that makes up so much of Guyana. Beautiful rainfall with a beautiful waterfall with a rainbow that covers when it hits the sun right just right. So really special to get out and explore this country. From professional milestones to cultural exploration, Guyana has really offered my family and I so much. It's a place full of promise and hope, and I'm really proud to be a part of what's happening here, even in just a small way. If you would have asked me 14 years ago where I would be upon not just graduation, but well into my career after my internships and all of that, I would have never imagined this would be my path. But I'm so grateful for where it's led and the people that it's brought into my life. So as I conclude, I want to challenge you all to find your why. What is it that's important to you, both now, whether you're at OU studying or well beyond in your career, both your career and your family? I've got to work with the greatest people, work on exciting projects and initiatives, and really feel challenged. And then also earn enough to fulfill the internal passion and travel the world. So thank you again for allowing me to share kind of my journey, my experience, both from when I entered the doors at OU, why I chose ExxonMobil to be the place for my career, and all that my career has brought me thus far. I hope my series here inspires you to embrace the unexpected, stay curious, and always remember the power of people, because that's what truly connects us no matter where we are in the world. So I just want to say thank you, and Boomer Sooner.
Thank you so much for that that wonderful presentation. And by the way, what time is it where you are?
So we are just an hour ahead of Central Time. So it is just 1:30.
Yeah, and what are some of the personal and family challenges that you face every day besides infrastructure reliability that kind of are different from living in a more economically developed part of the world?
Yeah, great question. So for me, one of the largest challenges is just we have a lot of restricted areas. And so for safety reasons. And so you can probably imagine, as I shared many slides with you and my passion for traveling, feeling a bit stuck sometimes in places where you cannot go and travel to is a little bit challenging. It's not, you don't have that high level of freedom that we do back in the US. Some other things that really challenge us as a family are accessibility to, let's say, your favorite foods. I know that's a bit of a first world problem, but I have kids that whether they want a certain thing or if I'm craving a certain thing, there's some limited availability on what you can kind of eat here. And so that's one. And then the main challenge, as I mentioned, just from a power outage perspective is or from a living perspective is those power outages. We experience them frequently. You kind of just have to hope the generator's good enough to kick in, but the generators here can't really power a whole home. So you've got to pick and choose where you want to try and use the little bit of electricity you have during those outages. So those are a couple of challenges we face, just from a personal standpoint, and the changes and stuff to our adjustment to living and just the lack of freedom we tend to get here.
Yeah, that is fascinating, and I'm envious of you living abroad. So you had talked a little bit in the beginning of your presentation about the warmth and the energy of the OU community from kind of when you joined, and I have to tell you that I've found this same thing over my 7 years here at OU. Before we continue with questions, I want to just recognize for a moment Dr. Paul Gilmore, who's the new dean of the Honors College. Paul is here with us. And he just started his new role as Dean of the Honors College like 3 days ago. So welcome. I was sitting listening to your presentation, thinking about what a fascinating and complex industry you work in. And also an industry that is so driven, right, between feast and famine with crude prices and so forth. So how do you find working in that environment day to day, year to year, with not only the complexity of your business, which is enormous, right, but also the fact that your profits are, driven so much by crude prices, which are largely entirely out of your control, right?
Yeah, it's tricky. And I mean, we all went through the pandemic, right? And that brought a lot of uncertainty for many different industries, of course, ours as well. But I like to emphasize we're not just an oil and gas company. So of course, crude is a huge driver for our stock price, right? And stuff like that. But there's so many things we invest in. We've restructured our whole corporate design to get into low carbon solutions, doing some carbon capture and sequestration. So there's several things outside of just kind of drilling and production activities that we've diverse kind of our corporate portfolio to be able to balance us, or to have that balancing act when, let's say, crude goes down. And I was very fortunate. It's one of the reasons I am truly grateful for ExxonMobil and that diverse portfolio as a corporation, because even in the times of COVID, when there was uncertainty for really just job security, I was very blessed. We just have such stability here for our employees, and we value employees so much that we do whatever we can to really keep things stable, because we are high risk in some areas and low risk in others. So it really balances it out where we don't have, a huge influx one way or the other, no matter which direction the market goes.
Yeah, that's fascinating, Shannon. So you talked a little bit about the sort of environmental sustainability initiatives, right, and the kind of diversity of that of the business beyond energy, or at least beyond traditional energy, right, oil and gas. And so one of the things that I'm super interested in is ExxonMobil as a leader in social sustainability. So human rights, from a supply chain perspective, right? The workforces in other companies that you're contracting with. Can you speak a little bit about some of the what's going on in ExxonMobil in that space as well?
Sure. Yeah. One thing that comes to mind from a social responsibility, I would say, is we call it local content. And so there are a lot of local content considerations of doing business in Guyana. For example, how withholding taxes are applied, and the need to go out and do public bids and tenders just for contracting. A lot of local requirements here in Guyana are driven. They're not just requirements to the broader ExxonMobil, but it's to generate the workforce here in country. So we have a lot of pressure to grow the local businesses and enhance the workforce development. And so in ways in other countries where you can just go out and source something, we don't have that luxury here. There's tons of rules and regulations we have to follow to make sure we're checking certain boxes. And at the end of the day, driving as much internal, like local businesses versus calling a global or an international company to ship us something right away, right? We try and look local first to make sure we have that local content presence here. Other things we're doing outside, I would say just outside of Guyana, and looking at kind of political responsibilities, and I mentioned the low carbon solutions business, reducing emissions, is looking to see how can we capture those emissions from a lot of our plants and chem plants and refinery plants and put them back in the ground to penetrate and be able to produce a natural gas or a gas that can be filtered to run a generator or run a data center, run any certain technology you can use from a coolant perspective. So there's a lot of projects in methane pyrolysis and hydrocarbons, and how can we come up with that specific science formula that can both be better for the environment as well as better for business.
Yeah, those are great answers and super interesting. I'm going to ask a few questions that are coming up in my chat from the audience. So these are audience questions. Can you speak to specific experiences, maybe programs or clubs or something else, right, that you were engaged in at OU that sparked your interest in world travel, traveling internationally, working internationally, living internationally?
Yeah. So the number one, I was from a small town. I would say I truly, if anyone's listening and you've only been outside of the US once or twice, that was me all the way until college. And the number one thing that sparked it, and I encourage everyone at OU to do it, was the study abroad for my capstone. And so to study abroad and do a study abroad program to not just get outside your comfort zone, but again, meet the people around the world, feel challenged in other ways outside of just curriculum, right? Like, how are you going to make it? What transportation do you take to the university abroad, or where is your class going to be held, and finding it in a different language? So highly encourage the study abroad programs, not just within Price College of Business, but that across the whole university.
So remind me, where did you study abroad?
In Spain.
In Spain. Yeah,
Mhm.
and so you were there for how long?
So it was a bit of a hybrid. We did it to where you study and then you graduate, like you do graduation and then you take off. And so I was there for 3 weeks. It was a bit of a, like I said, a hybrid one because of the fact that I had already had my employment job lined up. So I didn't get to kind of do all summer, but getting to visit some of the friends that have done full semesters. So I have many friends from college that did full semesters there, and just getting the experience they had of like truly embracing the culture over the course of 6 months, 4 to 6 months, was really special, I hear.
I had the opportunity to travel with for 3 months in Arezzo, Italy, and kind of all around Italy with our supply chain students and supply chain minor students a few years ago, and it was just such a wonderful experience for them and for
Yeah.
us. My wife
They
traveled with
did
me.
have that when I was a student, and it was awesome. So I'm glad the program is still thriving.
Oh, it is. And the campus is in Arezzo is beautiful. It's a 18th century monastery where they've restored the frescoes, and I mean, it is just this
Wow.
really vibrant, wonderful, safe, and enjoyable place to be. Another question from the audience. So you mentioned the diverse cultures and religions in Guyana. Did you feel as if you needed to adjust to these, or did the diversity make the adjustment process easier?
So the really cool thing about Guyana is the people of Guyana are so welcoming to expats. It might not, this is my first expat, so it might not be the norm, but for me, they embrace us so much. So we embrace them, right? We are visitors in their country. They're teaching us so much about how to live here and places to go and things to do. And just so proud of their country. And so for me, in return, I can only give them that same respect of learning about their religion, learning about how they celebrate. There was just an Eid event for the Muslim community, and I've never been a part of one of those, but getting to learn more about why they sacrifice certain things and what it all means was really neat. We don't, sometimes in the US, you're not surrounded by such a diverse group all the time. And so for my daughter to get to learn that right at a 3.5 age and get to know, like, oh, I got a henna tattoo because we're celebrating this. That was just really special for me. And so the same thing with Pagwa and getting to embrace the Indian culture is celebrating why. Why is it a colorful event, right? And it's just promoting and kind of celebrating spring and all of the good things to come. So I did not find it hard at all to embrace these very different cultural experiences or kind of cultural development, because it was just in return they were so welcoming and embracing myself from the beginning.
And so, and Guyana is an English speaking country, right?
It
Um,
is. It is.
yeah,
Yes.
so
The
must
only
have helped
English
in the
speaking
must have
country.
helped in the transition too, right?
Big time. Yes, as you can imagine, that was a huge perk when we moved here. There were no language barriers. So we have many expat friends in our community here where a lot have done Russia, Sakhalin, Russia, and that was really hard, having that language barrier. So we are very lucky. However, one caveat to that is it's Creole English here. And so I joke with a lot of the staff and local Guyanese that we work with that even though they're speaking English, sometimes it's so hard to understand. So it's a very thick Creole accent. And so if you think about even just in the US, the difference between myself as a Texan, I have some twang that comes out every once in a while. And then maybe a New Yorker, and you kind of get a little bit of different dialects. So you have that here, but to me, I joke and I say it's times 10 because when locals talk to each other, it's English, but I might not be able to understand it correctly.
That really resonates with me, Shannon. I used to travel to Northern Ireland, and the first trip that I made to Northern Ireland, I got into a cab, and I couldn't commute. We're both speaking English, and I couldn't communicate. I couldn't. Cab driver could understand me. I had no idea, what the cab driver was saying. Okay, another question from the audience. How do you balance local regulatory requirements with global best practices in your advisory role?
So it really comes down to like what is within the bounds of what we can do. So, for example, we have what's called a key consideration to this is we're always thinking about how do we develop the people of Guyana, right, as we're meeting expectations from the business. And we have what's called a petroleum agreement or a production sharing agreement that the affiliate here and our partners have joined together with the government. And so we're always looking for different opportunities there. It's a bit challenging because if I want to source something from, let's say, an international company, and I mentioned kind of the deep water port restriction, we have to look at it and say, well, they might have the better product, but what's going to meet the demand in our timeline? Do we want to make it in-house? Do we want to source locally, but maybe have a few more backups just in case it's not as engineered and designed to the right spec at which we want? And so it's a bit of juggling the act of, ways to show up both from an employee and a corporation perspective, but also supporting the government and the needs we have to run the business. So a lot of different development practices that we have to take into account with local suppliers. But even though it's a bit of a juggling act, the case to be is always local suppliers first.
That is fascinating. We are right here at the end of of our session, coming up on 12:45 here in Central Time. I can't imagine a more interesting time to be in supply chain management in a global company, working in complex supply chains and living globally. Just fascinating. You are on an amazing professional and personal journey, and I'm so envious of the experiences that you're having and that your children are going to have. I mean, just imagining, what their lives are going to be like having this broadening experience so young. We are so proud of you and all that you're accomplishing. You are representing your alma mater in such an outstanding way. And we're so deeply appreciative that you'd spend some time with us today, Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. I appreciate it. I really do. It's great to have that connection back to OU. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this.
Absolutely. And thanks to the audience. We had a very large turnout, and I hope you enjoyed the opportunity to visit with Shannon. And I know I certainly did. So thanks to everyone. Thanks, Shannon, and Boomer.
Boomer sooner. Bye, everyone.